SweetGeorgiaPam.com is the website. She's on social media, Sweet Georgia Pam. You know this by now. Pam, how are you, my friend? I'm just going to jump right in.
Yay, I'm so glad, Melissa. I'm good. How are you?
Good,
Let's
because
do
these,
let's do good, meaty work while our
yes,
listeners are here.
exactly. Well, I know we do this podcast and the episodes are short and I just, today we're not going to spend a lot of time explaining. We're just going to jump right in. And I know last week, Pam, we talked about a listener's dream about fire. And you had mentioned the complement of fire was water. Well,
Yes.
oddly enough, we got someone who has submitted something about water. So thank you so much for listening and
Beautiful.
paying attention and doing this. And she says, hey, can I ask about dreams about floating over bodies of water, such as the sea or lakes or even deep oceans? Feet get close to the water, but don't touch.
Oh, I love that image. Almost, but not quite.
Because
That
to me,
sounds like a lovely dream experience.
yeah, because to me now this is my first thought was now I'm not the dream interpreter, but to me I always envisioned that would be this is so I know crazy to say what death would be like. Because to me, like, oh, if you get to do anything, I'd be like, I'd love to fly. I'd love to fly over,
Uh-huh.
get a pass over, because that's one thing that humans can't do, right? So I would love to
Mhm.
fly over the mountains and fly over water and fly,
I
just
mean, I think just all of us, including our listeners right now, imagining floating over bodies of water creates a very serene felt
yeah.
experience for me.
Yeah, to
I'm
me
just
it's
like,
positive.
oh, hang on. Before we talk about the meaning, let's just sit in that for a minute. Can we
Yeah.
all just float over
And
your
now she said
chosen body of water?
now she did say float. I the one that said fly because my
Okay.
thought is for me it's speed. I want
Yeah.
speed and to feel kind of the cold air coming off the water, but she did
Yeah.
not say fly. That was
Yeah.
Melissa. She said float.
Okay, so we've got big or large bodies of water and we've got floating, and we'll talk about the feet almost touching. Yeah, it does feel very spiritual or otherworldly, very ethereal, this dream. So that's kind of the first place I'm going, is that, oh, this might be um an expression of enlightenment or spiritual journey or spiritual curiosity that has unlocked or opened up some new part of, my newly expanded consciousness that gives me a sense of relief and
Mhm.
lightness. So, enlightenment, we talk about floating on air, right?
Yeah.
Floating versus flying for a second. So, flying is intention based and effort based. Even if it's effortless to fly, I don't know about you. My flying dreams, I get so frustrated because I can hardly get off the ground, but I can a little bit. So I end up working really hard in my flying dreams most of the time.
I I can't see where I'm going. We've talked about this before. Whether I'm in a car, I'm
Yeah.
flying, whatever it is, I can't see where I'm going, and I'm worried that I'm going to run into something.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
can get up, but I
Yeah,
can't.
anxiety comes right on in.
Exactly.
Me too. I'm just
Yes.
like, why is this hard? I'm supposed to be able to fly now.
Right. But
Okay,
again,
so
I injected that. She did not
well,
fly. Right.
no, it's
But
such a great comparison. I was noting that too, is like, oh, floating, that's a different experience. Normally when this dream scenario comes up, people are talking about flying in a dream.
mhm.
Okay, so floating, then, if flying is intention based and effort based, floating is just what's happening in the environment, anti-gravity, that allows my body to be enlightened and supported by the air instead of being supported by the ground.
Mhm.
So that feels more loving. It feels more held, is the word that's coming to me, like spiritually held and supported, and like a gift, like I am receiving a gift of blah. I don't know if the dreamer themselves is in a journey and seeking enlightenment. They might not have any. They might be complete opposite of, creative, artistic, expressive individual. They might be a very, like, a financial advisor or something that is very grounded.
Mhm.
But this feels like some new hope on the horizon that has just, like, is sweeping me off of my feet.
Mhm.
So that's the floating piece for me. And it's also the bodies of water piece. So normally when we talk about water, we associate it with your emotional state. So if you're in a place of anxiety, you might experience a tidal wave. Or for me, sometimes the water is really muddy and there's alligators under there. So that's me being afraid of those negative emotions or whatever that are going to come get me. In this case, the water feels more like a spirituality, a state of spiritual well-being, or soul stuff. And the reason I say soul stuff is because when we are introspective and seeking, when we're seekers, we are really focused on gazing at the invisible stuff for us. That soul level stuff, we're never going to be able to see our own soul. Our eyes are pointing out for a reason, right? So the beautiful expansive bodies of water in this dream, which is, can you list them again for me?
Yeah, it was she said lakes, ocean. I don't think she said, let me pull it up. Did she say rivers? No, it was sea. So it was like larger,
Expansive.
like yeah, there
Yep.
was not one that had a current like a snaking thing, but it was seas, lakes, deep oceans.
Right.
And she
And
made a point to say deep ocean.
oh, nice. Okay. So, right. So that supports where, for me, what's coming up for me, which is that deep, expansive wisdom. It's also because it's a body of water, it's otherworldly. We can't live down there. We can't breathe in the water. So we can only skim the surface. So that also brings up spiritual depth for me,
Okay.
because it's beautiful bodies of water that are larger than me, larger than life, and that are otherworldly. And when
she and like I said, the fact that she there's an absence of description, there's an absence of adjectives, which makes me assume that these bodies of water were still. So
right.
to your point earlier about the movement of the water maybe displaying your emotions, she did not mention, because usually if there's an absence of description, that means everything was fine. We usually describe things that are out of the ordinary, right? Or something that's
Yes.
disturbing.
Yes.
So
That's worth noting for whatever reason.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. It's not always negative the way, but yes, it's interesting how we don't point out something that is at ease.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Right. We don't tend to that part. Well, so normally we talk about water with emotions. In this case, this type of water, this particular dream is evoking spiritual well-being instead of the emotional stuff. So your spiritual state. And then also bodies of water. There's a play on words, and I always look for that with dream stuff, is what else do I think of when I think of bodies? I think of human bodies, right? But this is a body of water that is a large collective. So it's almost as if where my brain wants to go is I am reflecting on, and in fact, water is a reflecting surface, isn't it? I am reflecting on the large collective soul, spiritual soul of the world, maybe, of the natural collection of humans. It's a very deep dream. And the feet almost touching the water, which is a great little detail, because details are pretty important. The first thing that occurred to me is the way that we describe spiritual journeys sometimes, or spiritual seeking sometimes, is that there's a thin veil between worlds. You heard that before?
Yes.
We talk
Well, I've heard
about
that
the
about,
veil is thin.
well, I've heard that mainly too about, and I'm going to diverge just for a second. My favorite holiday is Halloween. And that's the origins of that celebration, is that the veil between worlds is at its thinnest during that time of year. And the reason we originally dressed up was to make sure that the evil spirits didn't come over. So we were scaring the evil spirits from trying to cross that veil.
What?
So that's the origins of Halloween. Yes.
That's amazing.
And so, and I think that, the next day is the Day of the Dead. And I think that's another reason why that's a celebration, because again, the veil is thinnest during that
Mhm.
time of year. So anyway, so there's your little trivia.
And we
That's
can commune that way when the veil is thin. And you've heard about thin places around the world or
yeah.
deeply spiritual locations. People will travel to thin places for the spiritual seeking. So for
Mhm.
me, the feet almost touching these bodies of water is like getting close to that thin veil without crossing it.
Interesting.
That's what
Well,
comes
and
to me.
so you pointed out the detail, which I'm glad that she had that detail, but the details that people rarely include
Mhm,
or how they feel in a dream. And
mhm.
you have the very one that taught me to not just look at the physical things that are happening in the dream, but also how I feel about it. So it would be
Absolutely.
very so it'd be very revealing for her to explain how do you feel when your feet are almost touching the water, right? How do you
That's
feel when you're floating above the water?
right, and that's where that's where when I tend to say that not tend to say, it's the reason I say that dreams are from you, to you, for you, and when we start with how were you feeling in the dream, then I can follow your lead.
Mhm.
So if this dreamer had we made an assumption based on how we were feeling by the description of the dream, which is fine because we're projecting into it, but um all of this meaning would shift if the dreamer said, I felt terribly unsteady and I didn't want to be floating over the water. Something was almost dragging me across. And, like all of
Right.
those feeling tones would shift the meaning of the dream to something entirely different. So you're
Right.
right to say that, emotions are always the best place to start because it's the best way to follow the track of what was really trying to come through in the dream.
Right. So when you're dreaming and you wake up from your dream, don't omit the feeling you had. I was frustrated this morning. I had this I know it felt when I woke up, it felt like a heavy dream, uh,
Mm.
or a complicated or a lot of detailed dream. But man, as soon as I tried to reflect on it, it left me. So it because I try to do it as soon as I wake up because it's
Yeah,
almost like I take the time to reflect on my dreams as soon as I wake up and kind of go over them because I know that if I don't then I won't remember them later.
right.
And boy, that was one that left as soon as I woke up. Like it
Oh
wouldn't
my
let
God.
me
It's like a
grab hold of it.
shadow that you can see in the periphery, and as soon as you turn to look, you shine light and the shadow's gone.
And I
Like you
was like,
can't catch
wow, I
it.
guess I wasn't meant to
Man.
anyway. So if you go to sweetgeorgiapam.com, if you're interested in this, even if it's like it's not so much about my dream, but I just love talking about this or hearing about this,
Mm,
go to sweetgeorgiapam.com. She's got a brilliant newsletter. You can share in her world. Also online, Sweet Georgia Pam is her handle on all social media. And also, if you are someone who wants to better remember these dreams or be like me, where it left me, but I want it to grab it and I want it back, 6 Nights to Better Dream Recall is the guide that she has for free on her website, sweetgeorgiapam.com. My love, thank you so much.
sweet dreams, everybody. I hope we all get dreams of floating over beautiful
No,
bodies of
I
water.
still want to fly though. I don't want to float. I want to just.
Yeah.
I want the. I want
You're,
the. I want my speed to be so much that the water parts a little bit. It feels my.
ooh, yes. You
I
want to
don't
leave
know.
a wake.
I just want. I want. Yes, I just want to be fast.
You want to
Don't
create
know
the
why.
ripples.
We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye bye.